in conversation with Mark Williams. Mark Williams spent the first 21 years of his career as a special agent for the Organized Crime Division of the State Attorney General's Office. As part of his duties, he traveled across the United States as an instructor for law enforcement in various capacities. After he retired, he became a high school English teacher at an inner city school in central Phoenix, where he is the fourth generation in his family to live in the valley. His idea of the perfect ending to any day is curling up in his comfy bed with a good book and reading until his eyes cross. Mark was married for almost 38 years and is now widowed, has three children and 10 grandchildren. They currently reside in Phoenix. And on today's episode of Auto Interview, it's my utmost pleasure, joy and excitement to have on the show today, Mark Williams. How are you doing, Mark?
Very, very good. Very well.
Yeah, it's quite lovely to have you on the show, really. I'm quite excited we are here to talk about your books. Thank you so much for coming on.
You bet.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, really. So, Mark, I need to first say that I was impressed by your body of amazing literature works, and I would like us to start today's conversation with the one titled The Warwick Protocol. Could you tell us how this came about? What inspired you to write The Warwick Protocol?
It was it's the ninth book in all the novels, and it was right in the middle of COVID.
Yeah,
And of course, everyone is staying home and doing these types of things. And
fix Max.
I was the ideas of a book, usually it's the climax of the book,
Mm.
because that's I think what authors think of is I want to tell a story about this, and then it's the weave on how to get there. Well, I was uh, I was sitting at home at night and I'm watching documentaries. I'm flipping through the channels with my remote. And
Mm.
I go, and it dawned on me, what if some of these things that's going on in the world and politics and whatnot, what if they were all true?
Mm.
So Warwick, it started with the climax of the book. How does the book end? And then I started to backfill with all these, and I just kept one item after another. And I wove them into a story,
Mm.
and that's basically how the book was created. And it was fun to write. It was because you're taking real life issues
Yeah.
and you're fabricating, you're adding fiction to them. So that was the fun part.
That's quite amazing, really. I mean, I love your take on that. It is quite exciting to me, and I love the story you've just shared concerning how the book came to be, the backstories, the snippet into the making of the book. Thank you so much for sharing. And if you have a copy of the book there, I'd like you to show to the camera, just so it's what it looks like. The Warwick Protocol.
There it is.
Beautiful cover you've got even in. Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah,
That's
my book designer did a tremendous job on it.
that's quite
So,
commendable as well.
mhm.
Great. That's great. And also, Mark, you also have another book in the name of The Good and the Kind Man. And I need to say that's such a compelling and beautiful title because it is one that would spark curiosity. I mean, The Good and the Kind Man. What's it all about? I would love to find out exactly. But then for readers who haven't read the book yet, and without giving much information away, could you give us some of the snippets we would expect in terms of subject lines and themes? Picking up the good and the kind man.
It's a story about a man, or it could be a woman. You could substitute a woman in for the character, but
Mm.
I'm kind of writing from the perspective of a man anyways. Um, and he is going through life. He's
Yeah.
single. He was married, and life is just kind of getting by. And all through his life,
Mm.
he does things. He's good and kind, and he doesn't want to do that. Somebody will need help, and he just kind of goes, oh, and he does it. He still steps into it.
Wow.
And what it is this guy's life is guided, and all my books kind of have a spiritual side. There's always a spiritual side, but I don't overdo it because I don't want to sandbag the reader. I don't want the reader to go, "Oh, here's your motivation." It's not. It's
Uh,
because of my spiritual side that kind of falls into the writing.
yeah.
And this man is good and kind in spite of himself.
Mm,
He's got this like this destiny, this unseen hand, a friend once told me, is moving him through life. And at the end, some of these characters all kind of come together at one spot. It's like, again, the end of the story. So it was fun. That was a fun one too.
yeah,
They're all fun. I love all of them.
I love your motivation towards that. I love your motivation towards the making of the good and the kind man. Sounds quite beautiful and quite wholesome to me. And I'd like you to show that to the camera before I proceed to my next questions, really. Yeah. And I love the way you sampled all of them in the background in there. Beautiful, really.
Yeah,
Oh, it looks quite voluminous. Beautiful. Wow, the good and the
yeah,
kind man.
it's that's a good
Beautiful
one.
cover and font size, even. And Mark, with the number of published works that you've got, I am very tempted to ask who your target audience is. Do you write more to men or to women? I'm curious.
I I'm a guy, so I write from a perspective of a guy. I don't know what it's like to be a woman, right? So, but all my female characters are strong women. Even my villains. I have a villain in uh, Holy Ground
Yeah.
that's you almost feel like you're cheering for her because of what happened to her background. But
Mm.
she was strong. I got in Emancipating Elias, my first book. I got a mother and daughter who are um, strong women and that love relationship between them. Father's Day, I
Yeah.
have the mother of and wife of our two heroes and the character of our story
Mm.
that very strong. I mean, all through there's I don't make needy women. They can stand on their own and they do their own thing. So I guess my perspective is from a man's point of view, but I try to honor all women with strong women, with good, strong. Even the villain, I try to make as a villain, as a strong woman.
That's beautiful. I mean, I love your answers to that question, and some of the font you mentioned in there is quite hilarious. But then I love your take on that. I don't know what it takes to be a woman. That's quite beautiful to say, and I like the fact that you had to write from the perception of a man as a writer. And I think that would have to even be in the voice of the protagonist. If you have a character that are male speaking,
Mhm.
oh, this character is a man, this character is a woman, and these are the attributes that one have over another. That's quite beautiful, really. Thank you.
And
Thank
you
you for
got to,
sharing.
I think when you're writing, you try to, and I think all my books have these characters. Father's Day was written as a father who I had a son, and it's kind of a war story, but it's the son goes off to Iraq. Well, it was written right at the time that my son was in Iraq.
Oh,
So
wow.
there's those perspectives that you get that um, you can lean on, you can extract and use for storytelling. As a matter
Yeah.
of fact, that's where the climax comes, and then I try to get from the front of the book to the back of the book. So
Mm. That's
the ends of my book, all of my books are written by the end first. It's the first thing I do.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's a beautiful technique you've got in there. Quite a lovely literature style. Quite a lovely literature style. And also like you to tell us, there's quite a lot of father in here, really. I love you to tell us about your Father's Day too. Mm. Is that your picture?
That's a picture, and then I wove myself on the
Uh,
back of my books. I have the author's little tagline, and I try to put on a hardback book they'll have the flap and they'll have a picture of the author. Well, on trade paperback you don't have that, so the the characters usually on the back of my book are me in character.
oh wow. That's beautiful.
That's kind of fun. I kind of like that.
Yeah,
Father's Day, um, and we touched on it a little bit, is about the relationship between a father and his son and his wife and his friends. It starts off with the father is an older man like myself.
yeah,
He's running a flower shop,
okay.
and his two very close friends come in every day and they read the paper. They sit at the counter, and you can just, I imagine the flower shop owner and his wife are in the back putting flowers together, and these two guys are sitting at the counter turning the newspaper, and they're talking to each other. And of course, none of them have good hearing because they're older men, and they're talking back and forth, and that's just their life.
Mm,
But this old man, when his son goes off to Iraq,
yeah.
has to go to save his son. There's some action there that caused him to have to save his son. So he has to go back in time in his mind to
Mm,
be the man he once was. And he
wow.
never really, his wife knew, but he never really told anybody until you get into the book when dad has to be the young dad that he once was. And I think that's what, what would a father do or a
Yeah.
mother, because the mother has to make a decision in this too.
Yeah.
What would either one of them do to save their kid?
Mm,
And and it's I think I've had fathers read it and they go, boom, that was right on the
wow.
money.
Wow.
Yeah,
And that's an amazing feedbacks even to have gotten that, yeah. That's an amazing feedback. I love your take on that. That's quite beautiful.
thank you.
Yeah,
Are
that's
you a father?
no, I'm not a father. I'm not yet married.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, then you got to read the book when you become a father because that's what you got to do.
That would be great. Thank you, Mark. That was quite
Yeah,
fun. Thank you. And you know, Mark, one of the most interesting things to me as a writer is to sit back and listen to readers' feedbacks. And you may want to agree with me that one of the things that makes literature to be a bit complex in its entirety is the fact that it can be interpreted in different ways by different readers based on their opinions. Sometimes the readers might get a message intended by the author, sometimes they might be close to getting the message, sometimes they might be far from getting it, and sometimes they might hilariously misunderstand the message. And as interestingly fun as this sounds, I would like to ask you, how do you feel when readers interpret your works differently or slightly differently or even entirely differently from what you intended? How does that make you feel as a writer?
I love it. I've had one or two of those experiences where somebody came up and said, man, I was thinking this, I was looking this way and you took it the other way. And I go, I didn't even think what you were thinking.
Mm,
So the ability for words to come up with different emotions, different, you know, how some people will laugh at something and some people will think it's terrible. You know, you got
yeah.
that spectrum of emotion and perspective,
Mm,
and it's wonderful because it causes people to think.
absolutely.
I've caused people to think about this, and that's a wonderful, wonderful feeling.
Yeah, that's a great one, really. And I love your take on that, really. Sounds to me to be quite amazing. Sounds to me to be quite great. Because I think that's one of the things that makes book conversation and even book club meetings, for instance, to be quite beautiful. The way we can select a book and we have maybe 10 people come together to discuss it either in person or online via Zoom. And you would sit back and watch that the first person review would slightly differ from the second person review, differ from that of the third person, from that of the fourth person, and no. We keep having different opinions, different feedbacks, etc. I think it's a lovely one, really. I think it's a beautiful one to sit back and hear everybody throw in their take and even say some of the things that, slightly different from what you intended. And I like the fact that you have to mention that, yeah, you love it. It's a lovely feeling. Yeah, it's a lovely feeling.
Well, and I think you get it more in poetry
Poetry.
than I do
in
in a
actual
novel because
stories.
somebody could read it and then they got 200 pages to go, right? Your 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 poetry is here it is, boom, and people will take completely different. I'm sure you've experienced it, completely different perspectives
Yeah,
on the short poem that short document that you generate. So yeah, it's really fun
yeah.
to hear that.
Like that's true. That's true. That's true. And also, I'd like us to talk about your other book in the name of Looking for Indianola. I'm not quite sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Without giving spoilers, I would like you to tell us about some of the overarching themes that a would-be reader should look forward to reading Looking for Indianola.
Um, so all of my books, like I told you before, kind of have a running theme. And Indianola is um, an example of, and I come because my background is from law enforcement. So you kind of write what you know a little bit. And it's a it's a case, it's a case that this um, detective living alone
Mm,
has his two dogs. And right now I got two dogs asleep on the floor here. So I got my two dogs. So there's a huge perspective.
yeah.
And he is they all my books, there's no graphic sex.
Mm,
Um, there's love in all my books. There's swearing when it's appropriate.
mm,
And that's what I try to write. And he discovers that there's more to life, and he's going to allow himself in this case he's working. Um, he finds love. He finds something beyond what he's had. And I like this story because one, it has dogs in it, and um, if you're a dog lover,
I'm a dog lover.
anybody that tries, are you? Anybody anybody that would hurt my dogs is a bad day for them. So he has his two dogs, and the bad guys um, um, hurt his dogs. They're fine, but it hurts his dogs, and it motivates him in this case. And there's a couple other people in it that their personalities, I just love their personalities.
Oh,
And so it's a happy ending. All my books, I try to make a reasonably happy ending,
oh,
and this is one of them. So
oh. That's beautiful to know. That's amazing to know. I love your take on that. Quite great, really. Quite very great. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank
yeah,
you. Thank you. And now I'd like us to go back into the conversation and discussion of inspirations and ideas. Because I, particularly as an author, I'm always surprised about how novelists like yourself would sit down and craft long sentences and bring words together in a way that sentence come together to make paragraph, and paragraph makes pages, and pages make chapters, and chapters eventually come together to make a great novel. And this always leaves me thinking, how exactly did they get the idea and inspiration to pull these words together, to write these lines, to write this paragraph, these pages? And as far as writing is concerned, I'd like to ask you, Mark, how exactly do you get your inspirations and ideas to write this trunkload of books that you have behind you and all that? Where did they come from? I'm curious.
the the storyline,
Yeah.
like what we had talked about before, sometimes this shows up like Warwick Protocol. I'm sitting there watching TV and I'm going, what if this was true? What if this one's true? What um, going back to um, Emancipating. Emancipating was my first novel,
Mm,
and it it was a story that I first wrote as a screenplay,
mm,
and then I used it from the screenplay. It's 130-page screenplay, and I used it as a outline for the novel itself. And so the ends to me always come first. So I will write, I'll get that ending down on the computer, or it used to be down on paper.
Mm,
And then I would, okay, I got the ending. Now, how do I get there? And there's some writing tricks that you could do that, you know, you tell this you the end of the story is at the beginning of the book, and then the guy remembers back, and that's how you get there.
absolutely.
There's a lot of tricks to that, but when I write the ending, then my next thing is, okay, how do I get there from here? And sometimes that idea comes, and then I spend the time sewing the two. It's like you're putting something together. You put the skeleton together. Okay, the skeleton's connected.
Mm,
Now let's start. We go back again, and I'll write in layers from the beginning. Once I get the beginning and the ends kind of sewn together, then I just start laying like paint, like I'm painting. If anyone's ever painted on canvas, you
mm,
do a base layer, then you do a second layer and a third. And I
yeah.
don't know how many times I read or I work through my novels before I even turn it over to an editor.
Mm,
And that once I get that connected,
yeah.
then I can start being creative. I can start following rabbit trails down. I get an idea and I follow it. And sometimes I'll just write a chapter
Mm,
of the idea I came up with
yeah.
to be put in somewhere later on in the story.
Mm,
So if I know where it's kind of going to go, I'll put it towards the front or the back, but then I can move, the nice thing about the computer is you can move the whole thing over and change it and do that type of stuff. So,
absolutely.
and that's what I'm doing now again with the new book is I'm back painting from beginning to end,
That's beautiful. I think,
just like a poem, you go front, top to
yeah,
bottom.
yeah.
Okay, let's move. Yeah, same thing.
I think you've got a lovely and beautiful writing style. That's like a writing process, a very fun one you've got in there. And I like hearing the story of how your inspiration and idea come to be because sometimes when I speak with all the writers, they were like, well, Peter, I get inspiration from my real life experiences. I get inspiration from what I've seen around me. I get inspiration from the stories of friends or family members. I get
Yeah.
inspiration from conversation that I eavesdrop on that doesn't belong to me. I get inspiration hilariously from the dreams I have when I go to sleep at night. And it's always very surprising how this inspiration and idea come to be from different person to person. I think it's a lovely one, really. And thank you so much for sharing that of yours.
Have you ever woken up at night with an idea from a poem and had to write it down?
So
You
many.
because I'll
Sometimes,
forget it.
absolutely. I've got that so many times. My book, How the Demons Sleep, most of the poems in there are inspired based off the dreams I have. And I'll just say,
Right.
oh, this is the interpretation. Pick a pen, start writing. And I begin to interpret those dreams, and it just come alive like, wow, that's quite exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you go back to sleep, it's gone. The idea is gone.
Gone. That's one thing about writing. Even all those once those ideas come to your head, like it's like a voice speaking to your ear, it's very good
Yeah.
to write them down immediately. Because if you tarry a bit, or if you say, okay, wait for 1 minute, it will just fly off and they are gone. They won't come back again. So that's
See, now
that's
when you get to be my age,
yeah.
you'll go from one room to the other and you wonder why you were going there. You get there and you go, why am I here? I forgot why I came here. And so don't even think about remembering what you were writing about because I
Yeah.
forget it in seconds. So yeah.
Honestly speaking, and I think this is one of the beautiful, let's say, features that writing has, and the fact that this is actually one of the reasons why you can go back to your book. I mean, a book you've published, say, for instance, 10 years ago, or 8 years ago, or 6 years, or 5 or 4 years ago, and open it and imagine, really, do I really wrote this? I can't believe I wrote this. This is quite unbelievable. Like, when did I write this for? I don't know. Like it's like a very shocking because it's always date back to the fact that once you write something, you may not really remember how to figure it out exactly after that period. That's one of the reasons why beautiful books, you're like, oh wow, I can't believe I wrote this book. That's exciting. But I'm excited I
I
did, you know.
I was I'm trying to convert all my books to Audible,
Yeah.
and they're really the Audible when you hear something in you hear it instead
Audio.
of reading it, you get a completely different perspective.
Mm.
And I'm listening to the new Audible version of I think Warwick. I think no, we were doing Father's Day. That's the most recent one.
Yeah.
But I'm listening to it and I start laughing out loud at what the author, who's me, what the author said. I'm hearing it, and it's been years since I've read it or heard it, and I'm going, this author is great. He wrote some funny stuff right here. This is good stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
So you're right. You pick it up and you read it and you go, I'm enjoying it. It's good.
uh, that's one of the beauty of writing. That's one of the beauty. That's something I love wholeheartedly about it. And the fact that your book actually stays forever. It lives forever. Even
Mhm.
long after you've gone, they are still there. Your children, your great
Right.
grandchildren, great great grandchildren could pick up and say, this is the work of my father, the work of my grandfather, the work of my great. It's something to be
Right.
proud of, to be frankly speaking. Thank you for mentioning. I love your take on that.
Thank you.
Yeah. And just apart from the books we've mentioned so far, do you have any other works you've authored or say currently working on?
Um, the new one, so I have nine books, and you can find them on my website, all that type of stuff. But um, the new one is The Man with the Crooked Foot. Number 10 is The Man with the Crooked Foot.
Hmm.
How did I come up with that title? His foot was crooked.
Wow.
When I'm writing this, the climax,
Hmm.
the end of the book, when I'm writing it, the one of the suspects walked with a limp.
Oh,
And one
wow.
of the other, and they caught it on video, and one of the other detectives said, "What's wrong with his foot?" And they're sitting there talking kind of, and one comes up and says, "Why is his foot crooked?" And I go, "There's the title. We got the title." So um, another book I had was Last Ship from Vladivostok, and my kids they gave me static for that one because they're going, "Dad, Vladivostok. What? Why did you come up with that?" And I go, "It just came to me."
Hmm.
And they were talking to me about it, and I had a TV behind them. The TV was on,
Yeah.
and Dad, no one knows where Vladivostok is. No one knows. And it's the southern coast of Russia, right? It's the largest city, on the southern coast of Russia.
Hmm.
And right behind them on the TV was the news. And the news reporter was talking about the G7 summit in Vladivostok. And I go, turn around and look at the news. They looked and they go, oh. So,
Wow.
but they they come to me first the ending and then the title rolls in there in about an hour and
Hmm.
then I just keep I just write whatever comes up and how I weave it in. My brain doesn't really stop thinking these little rabbit trails I could take with the book.
Oh my goodness. Your brain travels many miles in hour, in minutes.
Yeah, sometimes I'll write something and I just start laughing. I go,
That's quite
what? Where
beautiful.
did that come from?
Oh my goodness, amazing imagination that sometimes could even be weird. But some
Yeah,
words
yeah.
getting off it. That's
As long as
always
I'm happy, as long as
honest.
I'm happy, as long as the writer's happy, we're fine.
Yeah, yeah. I love your take on these, really, Mark. I've been enjoying your answers to these questions. They're quite fun, quite educative, and quite beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. And before we wrap up for today, I would like to hear your take. If you have any sort of advice for upcoming writers who are still struggling with writing, publishing a book, what would you advise people in this category? And also, where exactly can interested viewers get a copy of your books from?
Okay. Um, I've had when people find out I'm a writer, they go, "Gosh, I wish I could write a book. I would love to write a book." Why don't you? I've been to Hemingway's house down in Key West, big
Hmm.
beautiful house. And he had a writing room. He had a table in the middle, and he had a typewriter that you used to punch.
Yeah,
And he had certain writing perspectives. Stephen King, who wrote a great book
yeah.
Stephen King on writing, and I tell your listeners, hey, get that book. He does a certain thing every day.
Mm,
If you want to write a book, a novel, poetry, whatever it is you want to do it. There's nothing to stop you. Well, where do you find a publisher? And I would say, um, I talked to early in my writing days, I talked to the for Time Warner Books. Now they've changed the name of that. And he said, here's a secret about the big six publishing houses. If they have an author, we don't have a clue. We, the publishing house, don't have a clue how well that book's going to go. Not a clue.
Mm.
Um, Harry Potter was a just a let's try this one. Let's talk about witches as kids. Or the Vampire Diaries or any of these big ones. They just go, maybe it'll sell. Well, they take off. They rock it. So the biggest the biggest advantage writers have now for
Yeah.
publishing is Amazon.
Mm.
Amazon probably is the biggest publishing house in the United States, and it's free. My suggestion to anyone that wants to write a book, if they were here, I would go start with the ending. You have an idea in your head about a story, and it centers around this thing. Start with that. Get that down on paper. Get
Mm.
that down on the computer.
Yeah.
Okay, how are you going to get there from here? And then start with and I said, pretty soon you're going to have the title of the book. So go with the title. Don't overthink it. Write that down. You can always change it.
Absolutely.
Um, and there was a great movie called Finding Forrester, and I think it was he was talking about he was I think it was after he was modeling after J.D. Salinger, who was kind of quiet, didn't talk to the press much, and he said in that story he says a writer writes.
Yeah.
Just sit down and start putting stuff down on paper,
Yeah.
and eventually you're going to have 50,000 words. That's a novel,
Mm.
and you'll get the end, then you go back to the beginning. And my other suggestion is have people read it and edit it.
Yeah.
Read my thing. But then you got to have tough skin when they come back and go, well, this, there's more red ink than black ink on it. They've saved your life an embarrassment because they found mistakes that I can't see them.
Mm.
I put words in or I take words out that my brain puts in or takes out,
Yeah.
right? Well, it's not on paper. That really isn't there. So write, write. Now, all my books, you can find all my books on my website. And if you can get a web page,
Yeah.
that's great. It's www.markjwilliams.com. And if you click on it, all the books are there. You can order them from there. You can see it, and
I'll
it's
say
a
that.
lot of fun.
Absolutely. I need to first say that I love your advice for impending authors and writers. It's quite beautiful, and I'm hoping that viewers, even including myself, would love to utilize it. And I also left a link in the description part of this interview where interested viewers can get a copy of Mark Williams' books directly on Amazon, on Barnes& and Nobles, on his website, and also on other platforms. I also left a link to his social media pages for possible followings. So thank you so much, Mark, for accepting the invitation to be featured on P English Literature. I must say this is more than awesome, quite exciting, very fun and great having this conversation with you around your beautiful titles. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.